Now, I think Ben misunderstood what I said here. I said that he'd chosen to ignore a piece of information, and the piece of information that he chose to ignore was the statement from Mac Brazel. And the reason that I knew that he chose to ignore it was that he told us that in a previous video. And I'll put a clip after this showing Ben ignoring what, brushing aside what Mac Brazel said. So this is just a bit of a misunderstanding, I think.
I actually posted a link to a statement made by Mac Brazel, which is actually on this channel, describing the Roswell debris. Now, Mac Brazel was the guy that found the Roswell debris. It wasn't found on July the 7th, it was found on July the 14th.
Yes, I meant to say June the 14th there. He found it something like 3 weeks before he actually reported it. That's how impressive it was. He waited 3 weeks to report it.
Describes it as bits of tin foil, you know, balsa wood sticks and all this sort of stuff. Now, I posted a link to that on Ben's channel, might have been one of his Roswell videos, but he chooses to ignore that. You know, the person that found it, he chooses to ignore. Now, that's a pretty good example, and he's choosing to ignore it. So he's doing exactly what he's suggesting this other chap is doing. I haven't looked all the way through this. Hang on a minute.
So, I choose to ignore a comment, a link that Steve Mumbling has posted in my comment section, okay?
No, you don't choose to ignore the link. You choose to ignore the information provided by Mac Brazel that the link linked to. So, you've read that. You followed the link and you read the information and you chose to ignore it. That's a bit of a misunderstanding, Ben. I'll leave a clip after this one of Ben saying that he's not really interested in what Mac Brazel had to say, even though he was the chap that found the debris. He's far more interested in what Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son have to say. And remember that the son was 7 years old at the time.
I choose to ignore it. I've chosen to ignore it. How do you know that, Steve? How do you know I've chosen to ignore it?
Well, clip coming up. Okay, here's a bit on Ben's reply video to myself, where he's denying that he said that he chooses to believe Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son, to ignore Brazel's statement, because that, if you read Brazel's statement, he clearly isn't describing an alien spacecraft, so he dismisses that and chooses to believe Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son. I pointed this out to him, he'd mentioned this in a previous video, and now he's denying that he said that. He's denying that he discarded Brazel's information and said that he preferred to listen to Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son. So I'll play you this clip, and then immediately after I'll play you the other clip from a previous video of Ben's, where he refers to where he says, you know, he's not really interested in what Brazel's got to say. He's more interested in what Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son have to say.
Ben said that he chooses to. When it comes to Roswell, he chooses to believe Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son.
This is a bit of derogatory. I choose to believe Dr. Jesse Marcel. Well, it's Jesse Marcel Senior, who was not a doctor. Dr. Jesse Marcel Junior is the son of Jesse Marcel Senior, who was the man who came forward in 1978 and spoke to Stanton Friedman. Okay, but I'll carry on. We'll carry on.
Yes, so if you look at this clip and then you look at the following clip, you'll see that it makes very little sense. Now he's saying that, you know, oh, he never said that, and that's derogatory. He never said that at all. Well, take a look at the following clip. Here's a clip from one of Ben's reply videos where he clearly talks about Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son.
The spacecraft to you. As I explained, Steve, it's not so much what Matt Brazel said, it is what Dr. Jesse Marcel Sr. and his son said. That's what counts, okay? Because
there we are. So there is Ben, and I hope that audio is nice and clear. There is Ben saying it doesn't really matter what Matt Brazel said. Forget what the man that actually found the debris and described it clearly said. Listen to Dr. Jesse Marcel and his son. And I think, as I've said before, Jesse Marcel wasn't a doctor. His son became a doctor much later in life. So there we go. Okay, now Ben is talking about Jesse Marcel's motivation. Why would he be motivated to come up with all this flying saucer UFO twaddle? Some people just feel the need for attention. They feel the need to be different. I know something you don't know. I think Corso. What would motivate Colonel Corso to come out with all that Roswell rubbish, you know? And I think that in Corso's case, all that happened was that he wrote his memoirs. And remember that the first edition of the book had a foreword by I can't remember who it was now, but might have been a senator or somebody, or an admiral, or somebody anyway, who later, who once he read the book, asked for that to be withdrawn. He said that he didn't write the comments that he wrote for that book. He said the book that he saw wasn't the book that he wrote the foreword for, and he asked for his foreword to be removed. I've actually got one of those early editions with the foreword that was later asked to be removed. But I think what happened was that Corso went along to see his publisher, and he'd written his military memoirs. And the publisher said, you know, this is as boring as batshit, but I see here that you're in Air Material Command, right, Patterson Air Force Base. Do you know anything about the Roswell incident? Because if you did, and you can tell us that you got first-hand experience of that, it will be a bestseller. If you can't bring Roswell into the story somehow, then you're going to sell 3 copies of this, and 2 of those will be to your mother. And I think that's why Corso came out with all that absolute rubbish about the Roswell, the day after Roswell, if you've the book is called. And I think Marcel's done the same thing. He's come up with this fanciful yarn. You know, it makes him somebody. It makes him a big fish in a little pond. He can tell his stories, and he enjoys that. It may have even been for financial gain. He might have got money out of it. I think Ben talks about his granddaughter. He might have wanted money to put his granddaughter through college, and he might have been able to get that out of this Roswell nonsense. And I think Corso was the same. He was just he just put something in there to make some money for his family, for his grandchildren, or for his children, or whatever. And I think it's as simple as that.
Because if he hadn't done this, we would never have known anything about it. It would have just been forgotten. It may have been dug up eventually by people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly, it would have been forgotten because there's nothing to it. There is nothing to it.
People going through newspaper archives and come across the Roswell incident and maybe made some speculation, but the actual story would never have become what it is today unless if Marcel hadn't done that.
Yeah, if Marcel hadn't told this fanciful story, and you know, because people are interested in this sort of thing, people can sell books by writing about this sort of thing. Away it went. That was that. The Roswell flying saucer story was born, really. Okay, what else is he saying?
So he's remembered as the man who either was a complete nutter and couldn't get over it, or was a whistleblower within the UFO community and be revered. Which would you choose, Steve?
Well, that's obvious, isn't it? That's obvious, isn't it? I mean, Yes, he's obviously going to be revered in the UFO community, isn't he? So it's and he's going to probably make quite a few quid out of it, I think, as well. So yeah, put a line through Jesse Marcel. I'll leave a link below. I think someone's done a little bit of research into Jesse Marcel and found that he was a bit of a Walter Mitty character. I think Ben actually uses that term. Was he a Walter Mitty? Yes, he was apparently, Ben. All right. Well, I'll end this clip here. I've just moved on very not very far at all. Now this I think is worth a comment.
Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. Was 7. He was I believe actually he was 8 years old, if I remember correctly, when...
Yeah, so he's so, you know, Marcel's son was 8 years old at the time. I thought he was 7, but regardless, yeah, he's a kid. Okay, so he's not going to be able to tell if something came from an alien spacecraft, is he? But I'll just play this a little bit more.
His father basically came home one day and said, I've just seen pieces of a flying saucer crash, and here they are. And he basically opened his bag and tipped them out onto the kitchen table at home. And his wife, I think it was quite late at night, he actually got them out of bed and he said, come down and have a look at this. And he showed them to Jesse Jr. and said, look son, can you believe this? Flying saucers are real, we got the evidence. And then that was before the cover-up. This was before.
Yeah. Now, when I was a kid, I showed I've got a younger sister, and she must have been probably that sort of age at the time. And I showed her, I had some newts in a bowl of water out in the back garden, and I told her they were baby crocodiles. And to this day, she believes they were baby crocodiles, even though I've told her they were newts. So, you know, you tell kids something and it'll stick in their minds, and they'll just they'll that's it. You know, that's if you tell them if you tell them they're baby crocodiles, they're baby crocodiles. If you tell them it's debris from a spacecraft, it's debris from a spacecraft. So yeah, I wouldn't give that any weight at all. Okay, let's just end that clip there. I was just going to talk a little bit more about Mac Brazel's statement.
Here we go. The second instance was an interview conducted at the home of Walter Whitmore, the owner of KGFL. This was probably done late on Monday, July the 7th. The interview was recorded on a wire recorder, which was the only technology available at the time.
Of course, the recording isn't available.
It was meant to be aired as a scoop, but never played on the air. The recording was lost to us because it was confiscated by the army.
Yes, it'd have to be, really, wouldn't it? Okay.
On the afternoon of July the 8th. Well, of course it would be, wouldn't it? Because that was when they were bringing out. This is when they brought out the cover story.
See, what you got to ask yourself here is the simplest question of all, and that is, why didn't Mac Brazel just say, if Mac Brazel had been got at by the government, why didn't he just say, yes, I found a weather balloon? Simple as that. Why say, actually what I found was nothing like a weather balloon, I've never seen anything like it. And then go on to describe the components that he found. Makes no sense whatsoever. It would have been so simple for Brazel just to say, if the government had said to him, we're going to kill you, we're going to kill your family, someone said that to me, I'd say, yeah, sure, I found a weather balloon. Of course I did, no problem. But he didn't, did he? Because none of this happened. It was nonsense. There was no pressure brought by the government. It's all hogwash.
Afternoon of July the 8th was when they were basically trying to stamp down on the flying disc story that come out.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted to stamp it out. So just prop Brazel up somewhere and get him to say he found a weather balloon. That didn't happen, did it? So no, Brazel's story is a true and accurate one, I think, of what he found, and he's certainly not describing any kind of ET craft, is he? Okay, I'll stop this clip there. Now here's Ben giving us his well-rehearsed response to anyone that hits him with Occam's razor.
all things being equal, the most likely solution is usually the right one. That is correct. And I explain this in my Skeptic video, so do go and watch that.
Yeah, I gave a response to that actually. Okay, we'll let Ben continue here.
It's a problem-solving exercise, which means if you want to solve a problem, always go for the most likely explanation first. And that makes perfect sense if you're dealing with known systems.
No, it makes perfect sense if you apply common sense. And he talks about a hierarchy of likelihoods on his other video, and you know, if you can place a hierarchy of likelihoods on anything. If I told you I was an alien, you could say, well, there's a high likelihood that I'm bullshitting you. If I said there's an alien spacecraft crashed in my backyard, you'd probably say, well, I think it's highly likely that's bullshit. You know, of a mundane earthly, if there's a scenario and there's two options, one is a mundane earthly scenario, in that a piece of equipment was launched from just up the road, it was secret at the time, it crashed in a field a few miles up the road, or whether an interstellar starship spacecraft crashed in the field. Then the obvious likelihood is that it's going to be the balloon string that was launched from just up the road that crashed in the field. The odds of that happening are far shorter than the odds of an alien spacecraft crashing in that field. That's a fact. That's pretty simple. That's pretty simple stuff. So his argument against the application of Occam's razor in the case of Roswell doesn't hold water. Not at all. Yeah, I don't think it's worth continuing with that. It's you can apply Occam's razor to that, and you can certainly apply a hierarchy of likelihoods to any scenario. Okay, I'll end that clip there. And now I've said that I do believe there's something to it, and I do. And but I don't believe alien spacecraft come here and crash. I don't believe anybody has any samples. And Ben's just talking about that comment.
Putting a figure on it and saying 99% of it is rubbish is not an argument.
Well, probably 99.99%, I think, didn't I say? And I do believe that's true. I think there's a lot of sensationalistic drivel about UFOs and aliens on the internet and in magazines.
Well, you know, as I said, we could go into other examples of possible, and I think probable crash retrievals events, because these things do sometimes come down. They do sometimes come to grief on the Earth's surface.
There's no evidence whatsoever for that. That's Ben's opinion. There's a lot of fanciful yarns about this sort of thing, but there is no tangible evidence. Nobody's ever produced a single piece of tangible evidence of a UFO crash. Not one. Not one ashtray off the dashboard of an alien spacecraft. Not one, you know, not one little grey alien sticker has been handed to an abductee. No one has been given a sample of something for analysis, you know, a bit of metal or anything. There is no physical evidence whatsoever. And I think this is why the government's the American government put 22 million in the pot to try and find out what was going on, because they don't know. There is no physical evidence anywhere on Earth.
For whatever reason, like every other mechanical device, they're fallible.
Like every other mechanical device, they're fallible. For an alien spacecraft to get here, we're talking travelling interstellar distances. The technology would be beyond our imagination. It's not going to fail. And if it did fail, it would be recovered. It wouldn't be left here for us to analyse. So nobody has any bits and pieces of alien spacecraft or any biological samples from aliens. It's nonsense.
And the beings inside them maybe are fallible.
Well, the beings inside them probably are fallible, but you're never going to get your hands on one. No, that's just nonsense. I think Ben has absolutely no concept of the level of technology he's talking about. He's thinking that alien spacecraft are built like aircraft. You know, they're probably riveted together and all this sort of stuff. And they're going to be, the technology would be so far beyond anything we could imagine, even that it's not going to come here and crash. That's just nonsense. Okay, I'll end that clip there. Okay, now here Ben mentions the Hutchison effect.
I was watching a video the other day and Ben was saying, oh yeah, well, the 9/11, it was an inside job. The buildings were brought down by a directed energy weapon.
Correct.
Absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever. He's just he's looked at some of the stuff on the internet, and he's probably read a book by Judy Wood. Absolute rubbish. There is no evidence whatsoever that a directed energy weapon was used on 9/11. We all know what happened on 9/11. Just nonsense.
And not only was it they brought down by a directed energy weapon, they were brought down by a directed energy weapon powered by free energy. I mean, what the hell? What?
Absolute rubbish. There is no evidence for that whatsoever, and there's certainly no evidence of free energy. This is just Ben's opinion. This is just because he swallowed a lot of codswallop he's seen on the internet.
What's next?
Yes, I mean the Hutchison effect. Please do read Dr. Judy Wood's book, Where Did the Towers Go?
Dr. Judy Wood basically says, I have no evidence, but I've looked at this, and in my opinion, this is what's happening. It's empirical evidence. Take my word for it. So put a line through anything Dr. Judy Wood has to say. It's nonsense.
She's a mechanical engineer, professor of mechanical engineering. She studied this in very, very great detail. It's a completely correctly formatted scientific study of...
No, it isn't.
...the 9/11 attack from the point of view of the destruction of the World Trade Center. Okay, she's done lots of lectures. She's looked into this. She's been working with John Hutchison.
She's been working with John Hutchison. Okay, and I'll include a clip of John Hutchison so you can judge for yourself how much credibility to give to anything Mr. Hutchison might have to say.
The man who carried out interference experiments using electromagnetic fields and found that they released energy from somewhere. If it's not coming from the plug and it's not coming from a petrol tank, then where's it coming from? You scoff at this.
I do, for good reason, Ben. Because John Hutchison is very obviously a nutcase. He's never been able to duplicate any of his claims. He's never been able to demonstrate any of his claims. Yeah, just take a look at the following clip.
Maybe you've done another video about this and in more detail, and I'll be able to tackle this in more detail. I'm quite enjoying these replying to you, actually, Steve.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ben. I'm quite enjoying replying to you.
Quite fun.
Yes, it is.
But yes, I do believe that is the case, and you shouldn't scoff about it.
Yes, I should. If that's my opinion, I should scoff as much as I like. It's nonsense. It's just forget anything John Hutchison has to say or Judy Wood has to say. It's nonsense.
So he says something else. Listen to this.
It was brought down by a directed energy weapon powered by free energy from an ET craft. Where's that story going? Absolute nonsense. Of course, we all know exactly what happened with 9/11.
No. I don't know if you're just not clarifying, or you're not giving enough details, or you're just trying to misrepresent me again.
No, that's just an example of how preposterous the story is. The buildings were not only were the buildings supposedly brought down by a directed energy weapon. That in itself is ridiculous. They were brought down by a directed energy weapon powered by free energy, which is even more ridiculous because there's no such thing as free energy. And by saying what's next, you know, they were brought down by a directed energy weapon powered by free energy, directed from an ET craft, is just going to the next step on the ladder of of absolute rubbish, you know. So that was why I said that. You know, how more ridiculous, how more fanciful can this yarn get? Where's the next step? Where can you go? You know, you've said it's a directed energy weapon, then you've said it's powered by free energy. So the next step has to be something more ridiculous and spectacular. And the only place you can go with that really is an ET craft. ET craft, isn't it? Or was it a space-based directed energy weapon? Yeah, it's just nonsense. But yeah, I just pitched that in because it's going up in levels of ridiculousness, if that's a word, becoming more and more ridiculous.
Suggesting that it was free energy from an ET craft, and there was an ET craft wielded the directed energy weapon,
because he's never said that. No, because as I said, it's just an example of how ridiculous the story is. Where's it going? You know, it's like the alien, the Roswell story. It wasn't spectacular enough. They didn't find any engines or anything like that, so they had to invent a second crash site. That wasn't spectacular enough, so they had to invent dead alien bodies. That wasn't spectacular enough, so they had to invent not only were there dead alien bodies, but there was a live alien. The story gets more and more and more, you know, ridiculous as the more spectacular claims that are made. And where was the next? Where could you go with that? It's just but that was all that was about. So I think he's misunderstood that.
Said that. What I just said was it's possible that study of the debris of incidences where extraterrestrial artifacts come to grief on the Earth's surface and are secretly salvaged by the government.
Yeah, but there's no evidence of that. This is Ben's opinion. Again, he swallowed stuff he's seen on the internet. None of this is... there's no tangible evidence for any of this. They've come to grief on the Earth's surface. He speaks with confidence as though he knows this, and he doesn't. He's just formed an opinion from reading all this bloody rubbish in books and looking at nonsense on the internet.
Study of that debris might result in the discovery of this system, because the propulsion systems and power plants of these artifacts are obviously not something that we use on this Earth. They're not flying across the universe on Texaco unleaded 4-star. So I did say that it's possible that some of the weapons that were used, which were wielded, which is provable, against the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001, might have come from one of these studies.
No. That's there's no proof whatsoever of any of that. Weapons used on 9/11. Absolute nonsense. Show us some tangible evidence of that, Ben. There is none. Okay, I'll stop that clip there. Now, just a quick bit about the Hutchison effect. There is no such thing. And if anybody tells you that there is, you can immediately put a line through anything they have to say, I think, because here is John Hutchison. He's been peddling this absolute twaddle for years and years. I think he's I don't think he's ever had a job in his life, and he sort of collects all this old military equipment and plays around with it. And because he's got a lot of metal boxes that connect together, and you know, he can. A bit like Tesla, he can do some things with high voltage that look impressive but don't really do anything. People will actually swallow this absolute twaddle. So here's John. Here's just a quick clip from John Hutchison. The Hutchison effect. You can see that, the Hutchison effect. Now. Let's just have a very quick listen to what he has to say. There's someone around there, I don't know whether he's a scientist or whether he's just a reporter, this guy, but he's just asking him just a couple of questions about it.
One was kind of a pass-me-down question. In terms of funding, how much would it cost in terms of dollars, do you think, to set up your lab to be able to produce the Hutchison effect again? The classic effect.
The classic effect, probably, if I started from the basic U.S. government test.
Sure.
So this is a lot like these free energy people. You know, they've made the free energy device, they've produced free energy, but they can't replicate it, they can't duplicate it, they can't show it to you working. Oh yes, well I had it working, but of course, you know, the government have confiscated my equipment, or I've had to move. I think what's that other guy's name? Eric Dollard is another one that peddles all this absolute nonsense. Had it all working, but his lab was raided, and so how much is it going to cost for you to duplicate the classic Hutchison effect, John?
Documented phenomena that's been interesting a number of our government friends recently, I guess.
Yeah, there were estimates many times over, but of course the cost of things and availability of things changes, so off the top I'd have to say $500,000 maybe. That's really off the top.
Oh sure. Would that be all equipment costs, or would that also be facilities?
I don't know where it's where can I find the transformers I once had?
Where can I find the transformers I once had? I would have thought that. So basically, what he's saying is he can't duplicate it because he can't get the transformers he once had. But if this was real, and he was trying different transformers to make this effect work, he would have written down the technical parameters of those transformers. Primary winding would be so many volts, secondary winding would be so many volts, be so many secondary windings, what the current ratings would be, and if this were real, and the claims, because the claims he makes are quite spectacular, if this were real, you could custom make one of those transformers. Someone would put the money up and just custom make an identical transformer. He doesn't have that information because it's nonsense. He's got an old transformer, a junk transformer, and he's had a bit of a play around with it, and claims this magical effect, but he doesn't know anything about the transformer. Nothing at all. He can't tell us what the technical parameters of that transformer are.
Yeah.
All that stuff in the wire, is it still around?
And the wire, it's got to be special wire. So any old wire won't do. So what's so special about this this wire, Mr. Hutchison?
Like things change, scrapyards come and die.
Things change, scrapyards come and die. So you need to be able to get those identical bits of scrap to be able to demonstrate the Hutchison effect. It's laughable, absolutely laughable.
Unfortunately, convoy electrical machinery came and gone, so all that stuff is very scarce.
Of course, he doesn't have a list of all these bits and pieces, the technical specifications for the wire. What's the diameter? What's the current rating? What's the multi-stranded solid core? Is it copper wire? This is just beyond rubbish.
Unless, of course, you buy it new, and that's where the cost would probably come in.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, unless, of course, you buy it new. Yes, okay. So, so you have all these technical, you have all this technical information, do you, Mr. Hutchison? Well, let's see it. Let's see it, because if this were real, someone like Elon Musk, or Richard Branson, or someone like that, just put their hand in their pocket and give you $500,000 and say, "Show me." That's chump change to people like that.
And one of the things you indicated before, though, is if you buy it new, it doesn't always work the same, right? You have to retune everything, probably.
Well, yeah, that's the major thing, is the tune-up.
So even if you could buy all this stuff again new, there'd be some reason why you wouldn't be able to make it work, and you wouldn't be able to duplicate it, and you wouldn't be able to demonstrate it.
6 months to tune it up. So 6 months and probably $500,000. still in terms of a lot of the projects, and they would be guaranteed a result, which they don't see with a lot of the projects they invest in, so that would definitely be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So
I never guarantee anything.
yeah.
Oh, no. I say you take your chance, and I've said that to everybody.
So what he's saying is that he can't guarantee that he could duplicate the effect. He knows because he knows very well that he wouldn't be able to. So just in case somebody did come up with $500,000, there's his get out of jail free card. I guarantee nothing. I never make any guarantees. So put a line through the Hutchison effect. It's absolute rubbish. Now I don't know whether to put this up as a standalone video or whether to incorporate this in a part of a reply video that I'm going to put together, but I might use it more than once actually. But this is John Hutchison, nutty as a fruitcake. If anybody tells you there is a Hutchison effect, I think it's fairly obvious just by looking at this guy and listening to what he says for 5 minutes that it's absolute rubbish. Put a line through the Hutchison effect and anything John Hutchison might have to say. Okay, thanks for watching. Perhaps I'll catch you again. Okay, now my other camera has just died, so the battery in it's died. So I'll try and continue this with my GoPro. See how it goes.
That's completely wrong. That's totally illogical.
The dramatic effect, but that's what happened. Some guys hijacked some planes and flew them into some buildings.
Some of them are still alive.
Anyway,
No, I'm sorry. If some of them are still alive, got any evidence of that? Got any proof of that? If one of those people was still alive, they could make millions out of going on 60 Minutes. Can you just imagine that? Absolute nonsense. Some of them are still alive. Rubbish. I think Ben is of the opinion that no aircraft were involved in 9/11. Well, that's just absolute nonsense. So every single funeral for every single passenger and every single crew member would have had to have been a fake. Every single maintenance record for every one of those aircraft would have had to have been fabricated. Everybody that had signed off on maintenance on those aircraft over the years or decades that they were flying, all the maintenance records would have had to have been fabricated. All the people that had signed off on the maintenance of the aircraft would have had to have been in on it. It's absolute nonsense. Anyone that says there were no aircraft involved in 9/11, put a line through anything they have to say. It's not worth listening to. It's just nonsense. I'll just let that continue for a bit.
going off at a tangent here.
Did they parachute for the plane?
It's not as bad.
Did they parachute for the plane, Steve? Is that? I honestly.
Did they parachute from the planes? Who? Yeah. This is just twaddle.
Thought that was going to come out, you know. Yeah. Now, sorry, I'll let Steve carry on.
So he's saying some of these people are still alive. Did they parachute from the planes? Well, where's the evidence for some of these people being alive? Absolute nonsense. I mean, no. If just one of those people came on the internet and said, "Look, it's it's an inside job. It's all a con. I'm still alive." The world's media would be jumping on them and throwing money at them for their story, and that hasn't happened, has it? It's too ridiculous for words.
Off at a tangent, so I've sort of followed him, but hopefully he's going to get back into the circle of what he's talking about.
Mad as Miles, I don't think quite.
He just said I wasn't as mad as Miles Johnston. Is that a compliment or an insult, Miles?
That's a compliment. Miles Johnston is, again, as nutty as a fruitcake. He was talking about his scuttlers, these big spiders getting into his broadcast transmitters, and I'm going to do a video on that. I think that's absolutely bloody hilarious.
What do you think?
But Ben is another channel that I look at mainly, well, for amusement, really, for entertainment. I don't really take anything serious.
Well, you see, again, if it entertains you, Steve, well, I'm pleased. You know, I do aim to entertain as well as enlighten. And if only get half of those things, well, 1 out of 2 is not bad, isn't it?
Yeah, likewise. I don't really care why people watch my videos, whether they find them ridiculous or whether they find them entertaining. So I'm with you on that one. And yes, I do find these videos entertaining. Otherwise, I wouldn't watch. And you never know. You know, one of these conspiracy guys might stumble across something that's actually interesting. So it's always worth having a look.
As you might have heard.
Seriously, got to see on there. But Ben's always good for a bit of a chuckle over, you know, coffee and some choppy digestives.
Yeah, I think I'm more kind of like evening meal and white wine sort of person.
Yeah, well, maybe your budget's a little bit different to mine, Ben.
Today button on the Panel TV blog. Oh yeah, it's, okay, I'll pause that there. Okay.
I'm not sure what you make.
Research and assessments of threat posed by the objects. The funding up to this has been less comfortable. Yeah, okay, we're putting 22 million in the pot to assess whether these.
Okay, so he's talking about. Sargon is talking about the budget now for this particular event. I'm about to reply to him, and then Steve justified. But you see, Steve, the U.S. government is saying these things don't exist. This is the same government that's told us the truth about Roswell. So why do you accept one half of this scenario and not the obvious implications?
Well, because if they said that they were interested in investigating UFOs, every nutcase would be sending them UFO reports. They'd have to have someone like Nick Pope sitting behind a desk somewhere handling all this. They're not interested in dealing with the public. They're interested in having a look at what their military is seeing. It's as simple as that. So they're not going to tell people that they're actually looking into this because they don't want to attract attention to it. They don't want, and they certainly don't want reams and reams and reams of ridiculous garbage information that they have to deal with. And I've just noticed you can see the red dot there from the GoPro to say it's recording. Okay, let's just stop that one there. So here's Ben telling us about his writing prowess.
I've written 2. I'm writing a 3rd one now. Now, I have the writing abilities. I can write good fiction.
You have writing abilities. You can write good fiction. Now, I haven't read any of your stuff, Ben, so I can't really give you a critique. But generally, people that can write good fiction make tons of money. The impression that I get from yourself is that you probably don't have tons of money. Now, I apologise if that impression is incorrect, but people that write good fiction, people like J.K. Rowling, make a few quid, don't they? People that they're not hobby writers. So unless you're making enough money to buy houses and cars and boats and all that sort of stuff, I would say that you're probably your opinion of your own writing ability may be a little bit on the optimistic side there, Ben.
Okay. Don't you think that I could write something a little on a different subject and perhaps be more successful? Because
people tend to write books about either what they know or what they think they know or what interests them. That's just the way it is. And the 2 best-selling genres are UFOs and murder mysteries, serial killers, that sort of stuff. And I can't remember which way round it is, whether the murderers and serial killers is number 1 and UFOs is number 2, or whether it's the other way around. But yeah, certainly there's money to be made. There's money to be made in UFO books. People tend to write about what interests them, and I think trying to write about something that doesn't interest you would be quite challenging, to be honest. Then that one there. Now I've just suggested that maybe some alien abductions do occur because aliens might want to engineer a bioweapon in case they needed to neutralise us as a species. So they'd need DNA samples from every race on Earth. They'd need to guarantee basically they'd kill everybody. And Ben seems to think they wouldn't need to abduct people to do that.
I don't think. Well, you can get DNA samples from a strand of hair. They just need to, or a skin cell. They just need to come down and basically follow you around until you shed a fragment of hair.
Yeah. Or they just need to come here and stay in cheap motels for a few days. You know, there'd be wall-to-wall DNA samples in cheap motels. But they wouldn't know what race of people they were getting the DNA samples from, would they? You'd have to get DNA samples from a specific set. There'd be a specific set of parameters. So you'd need every single race. You'd need male and female from every race. It may even expand on that. So you're not gonna. Yeah. Follow someone around and break into their house and take some hair from a hairbrush. Okay, you'd know who it came from, I suppose. But it would be a lot easier if you were driving down a lonely country road, wouldn't it? Just to shine a beam of light onto your car and stop it and paralyse you and just take your samples. So I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility. But I'd put a line through most of the stories that you hear told about that sort of thing, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. Okay, let's stop that one there. Now we're talking about remote viewing. I'm saying it's rubbish, and Ben is saying no, it's not.
It doesn't fit with the evidence. Stubblebine is now quite active in the organic foods movement, and some people say he's not to be trusted. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's an obvious connection, isn't there, between organic foods and remote viewing?
There is nothing to remote viewing.
Yes,
there is nothing to.
You say that as though you know, but you don't, do you? Because it's not real. There is no evidence whatsoever for remote viewing. Show us some evidence. Get some people that claim they can do remote viewing to prove it to you. That would be, I think I mentioned that before, that'd be an interesting experiment. Get someone to remote view my house. It will never ever happen.
Connecting to aliens. It's all rubbish. I'll tell you what, Ben, if you get...
I'm sorry to use the cliche, Steve, but that's what they want you to think.
No. I mean, if you watch that Stephen Greer's rubbish, you know, about this CE5, you know, using consciousness to connect to aliens and summon alien spacecraft, it's all absolute nonsense. The way that works is that you find yourself a spot near an Air Force base, not too close to an Air Force base or an airport, but close enough that you can see the really bright landing lights approaching, and it looks like they're motionless in the air while they're coming towards you, and then of course they turn. And they effectively appear to disappear because they're far enough away that you can't see the strobe lights and all that sort of stuff as they turn to make their final approach. And this is done, you know. And these people that do this CE5 stuff, they will tell you that the aliens never get close enough for you to actually see them. They just show you the bright lights, you summon them, and you see the bright lights in the sky. And that's how this CE5 works. It's a con. You can't reach out to aliens with your consciousness. You certainly wouldn't be able to summon them. You think they're just in orbit all the time, waiting to be summoned by you, standing on a hilltop, mentally reaching out to them. It's preposterous nonsense.
I'm going to rewind something because I interrupted in mid-sentence.
There is nothing to remote viewing.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that, Ben. I do that to you all the time.
There is nothing to consciously connecting to aliens.
Yes,
it's all rubbish.
No, there isn't. I'd like to see some evidence of that, Ben. Show us some evidence of people consciously connecting with aliens. Yeah, nonsense.
I'll tell you what, Ben, if you get to see this video, I mean, you go to all these things and you see all these loonies. If one of them tells you that they can do remote viewing, or that
there we go, and I go on to suggest that next time somebody tells him they can do remote viewing, to ask them to remote view something in his room there, and they won't be able to do it. He will hear everything under the sun, other than, yeah, sure, Ben, this is here, this is there, this is precisely what it is. You've got 3 books on top of each other over in the corner there. One of them is this, one of them is this, one of them is this. That's remote. That would be remote viewing. Not, you know, oh, I can't quite see, it's a little bit cloudy. You know, there's some books there, and there might be a David Icke DVD. Yeah, forget it. Okay, I'll stop that one there. Okay, well, he goes on to talk about the Clintons and Derren Brown. There's not really very much in there worth commenting on, so I won't bother commenting on that. I'm not sure that I really like the idea of doing these clips and then joining them together to form a sort of response video. I preferred to do it the other way, the way that I did it before and the way that Ben is doing it now, but I don't really have the time, a little bit busy, so I've just shot a few clips and I'll join them together. So apologies for the fragmented format of this particular video, and I can't guarantee I won't do it again, but I don't intend to do it again. 2 different cameras. You know, the appearance of it's not very good, but I think the comments are the important bit. So I didn't shoot it at the beginning, but Ben said something about I should have left a link to his video that I'm commenting on, and that was yeah, that was a perfectly valid comment. So this time I'll do that. All right. Well, if you've made it this far. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll catch you next time. I'll just spend a little bit of time joining these bits up, see how it looks. It will probably look atrocious, but I'm going to be a little bit busy over the next. Well, I'm going to be a little bit busy, so I won't really have time to sit down for 2 hours or so and go through this like I did with the other one. And just take notes of timestamps and do all that sort of stuff. So I've just watched it and done this as I've watched it. Okay, maybe I'll catch you again.